Now let's see different ways fine dust can be solved, how countries are addressing it, and what we can do. Then, how much fine dust from China affects South Korea? As you see on the graph that shows the effect of fine dust from Beijing on Seoul, in 2014, when the density was highest in Beijing, it was highest in South Korea, and when it was low in China, some parts of South Korea have low density and others don't. Sometimes it matches and sometimes it doesn't. Research shows that 30 to 50% of fine dust in South Korea is from external factors. If so, in 2013 to 2017, when the density of fine dust from China decreased, we would expect the density of fine dust in South Korea to decrease, but it didn't. According to the National Institute of Environmental Research, air pollutants from China annually affect 3 major cities in South Korea by 32%. But by comparing several types of research, there are varying results. For example, at a fireworks festival at Lotte World, the density of fine dust was high at 2 kilometers away from the area, but there was no difference 4 kilometers away. As you see the density of ultrafine dust on the map, there are days when the density of South Korea is higher than that of China. In short, for fine dust from China to come to South Korea, it has to go up high in the sky, at least 1,500 meters high, so it can drift to South Korea in the wind current. And the distance between the air pollutant of China and South Korea is about 1,000 kilometers, and there is the West Sea. So the stationary atmosphere is considered to be the main cause of the fine dust problem beside the external influx. The point is that even if China changes its practices, we cannot guarantee that the fine dust problem will be solved. Let's see how Japan solved their fine dust problem. Kawasaki City in Japan is a city between Tokyo and Yokohama, with a population of 1.4 million and is one of the major industrial cities in Japan. At the bay of Kawasaki City, there are many factories for major industries such as steel, oil, machines, etc. This area has grown into an industrial center of the nation. In the 1950s, large oil factories were built in the area and air pollution followed. It was so serious that it impacted the health of local residents. They even called it Kawasaki asthma. To solve the air problem, the city made a contract with 39 factories for spontaneous air pollution prevention. The city was 30 years ahead of the government for air quality improvement. This is a chart to compare the policies of the city and government. As you can see on the chart, in the 1960s and 1970s, the policy of Kawasaki City has various kinds of measures. There were financial support, regulations for total emission, the establishment of a monitoring system, contracts for pollution reduction, creating environmental estimation forms for preventative regulation. One thing we should focus on is that financial support and incentive for small companies came before other policies in 1959. SOx is made by fossil fuels such as coal, oil, etc. This stimulates the throat and increases respiratory diseases. As you can see on the graph, in the 1970s, the density of SOx decreased the most. The major policies enacted at that time were the Air Pollution Preventative Agreement, Ordinance for Pollution Prevention, Pollution Monitoring Center, and Ordinance on Environmental Assessment. Let's find out how these policies brought successful fine dust reduction. First, the Air Pollution Preventative Agreement was an agreement made between Kawasaki City and the local business center. It was experimentally introduced by Kawasaki City and has now become a national standard that controls the pollution of local business centers. This agreement contains the following 4 pledges. First, make plans to reduce air pollution. Second, manage the progress of those plans. Third, cooperate with the government when air pollution gets too bad and needs mediation. Fourth, report the elements of fuels and sulfides. The Ordinance for Pollution Prevention demonstrates the policy of total emissions that control the amount of the total emissions of pollutants in each facility. The Ordinance on Environmental Assessment makes new facilities follow the following conditions and manage the overall pollution. First, it should investigate and estimate the potential environmental effects of the facility on the ecosystem, society, and culture. Second, Be transparent in information to residents and consider their concerns. Third, minimize the effect of the facility based on the concerns of citizens. It's impressive that the policy even considered the concerns of the citizens. Next, the environmental effects suggest the overall framework to reduce pollution and demonstrate that the facility should consider the concerns of the residents in a positive way. Kawasaki took steps on air pollution sooner than the government and took additional steps to make overall environmental plans considering other environmental issues. Let's take a look at South Korea's contribution rate of fine dust emission by sector as an example. It's 41% business, 12% in diesel, followed by ships, construction, and machinery. This shows that fine dust happens as a result of economic activities. The heads of the World Health Organization, the United Nations Environmental Program, and the World Meteorological Organization have launched a new global coalition on health, environmental, and climate change coalition. One of the overall goals is to reduce the number of deaths per year from environmental risks, particularly air pollution. The primary focus is to identify air pollution and map its sources and health impacts to encourage action. The second is communicating and advocating at all levels, and the third is providing effective responses to acute air pollution episodes. The fourth is supporting science-based solutions and building the capacity to act on health, environment, and economic sectors, and the fifth is implementing solutions in sustainable development. Let's take a look at other countries' reduction plans. South Korea announced a comprehensive plan for the new government's fine dust management in 2017 to reduce domestic emissions by 30% and reduce bad days by 70%. India announced comprehensive management measures to reduce fine dust in the Delhi government in 2019 and came up with measures such as odd-even car driving in winter, suspending construction work, and the tree challenge to encourage tree cultivation. Japan is imposing fines and suspending cars that fail to meet the emission standards and expanding eco-friendly vehicles such as hydrogen and electric cars through the No Diesel Car campaign. Since 2018, China has been strengthening the management of secondary products of ultrafine dust, focusing on improving urban air quality by region with the Blue Sky Defense War. Europe designated the LEZ, Low Emission Zone, to restrict the passage of vehicles that emit high pollutants based on Euro emission standards. Currently, it's mainly implemented in large cities in Europe, including England, Sweden, Norway, etc. Germany made it mandatory to attach emission stickers to drive in the low emission zones, LEZ, in Berlin and allow only Euro 4 or higher vehicles to enter major cities. Electric buses are in operation, and MOS, which purifies the air, is installed on the outer walls of the buildings. Milan, Italy, introduced the EcoPass, which charges fees on vehicles that violate emissions in traffic control zones and invests fees in climate and atmospheric projects. Helsinki introduced WIM, a public vehicle sharing app, which provides the best way to travel by integrating all transportation resources such as buses, subways, shared vehicles, and shared bicycles in Helsinki. After the implementation of the policy, vehicle-owned households decreased by 60% as of 2017. Helsinki is planning a city without private cars by 2025. Also, new inventions are being developed to absorb fine dust. Germany's city tree is an air-purifying bench with moss walls. This moss absorbs about 125 grams of fine dust per day per bench and removes 120 tons of carbon dioxide per year, which is equal to 275 trees. Currently, it is installed in more than 20 countries in Europe. The 7-meter-tall tower in the Netherlands is a smog-free tower that reduces fine dust by 45%. It can clean 30,000 cubic meters of air per hour by sucking up dust floating in the air using static electricity. It has been confirmed that fine dust decreased by 45% and ultrafine dust decreased by 25% 10 meters from the tower. The ceramic honeycomb air filter is a technology that filters automobile emissions, filtering only clean air by sticking fine dust on the filter. After operating this product, the concentration of ultrafine dust fell to 0 micrograms per cubic meter, measuring with dust measuring device. In fact, after installation in Paris and Shanghai, it was confirmed that the concentration of ultrafine dust, which was at the level of very bad, has decreased to less than 10 micrograms per cubic meter, which is within WHO guidelines. If a 10-meter high air purification facility is installed using this filter, it can purify 3.6 million cubic meters of air every day. A technology that can reduce more than 14% of the generation of fine dust has been developed in South Korea using carbon dioxide collection technology. It has the advantage to prevent fine dust emissions and collect carbon dioxide at the same time, and sends gas from the chimney to the absorption tower to meet the liquid and catch the fine dust. If it's applied to thermal power plants, it can reduce the amount of fine dust generated in South Korea by 14.8%. Next, let's look at reducing fine dust through the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal wants to create good jobs, protect the socially disadvantaged, and resolve inequality in the process of rebuilding all infrastructure into a low-carbon, fine dust-reducing type to make greenhouse gas emissions net zero by 2050 in response to the climate crisis. Financial projects, government procurement, tax cuts and subsidies, and regulatory innovation measures are policies that can practically reduce fine dust and enable environmental and social benefits to citizens. South Korea has introduced Green New Deal policies to create jobs for air pollution measurement agencies and design environmental pollution monitoring systems that aim to expand professionals in management and supervising businesses, contributing 40% in generating fine dust and advance in ICT management and supervision. The U.S. plans to create 10 million environmental jobs by eliminating fossil fuel subsidies and set limits on methane emissions in the oil and gas industry, and build 500,000 new public, eco-friendly vehicle charging stations by 2030. Germany has planned to supply eco-friendly vehicles and install charging stations. Coal-fired electrical power plants will be completely closed by 2038. And the share of renewable energy in power consumption will be increased to 60% by 2040. To achieve zero carbon emissions by 2050, the UK has announced 10 key plans for the green industrial revolution to create up to 250,000 green jobs by fostering green technology and finance. India has come up with a plan to create 6,500 additional jobs in the auto industry by 2026 under its eco-friendly automobile policy. Now let's look at how the city can be transformed by the Green New Deal policy. Los Angeles, USA has plans to become more eco-friendly to improve the health and well-being of residents, mitigate climate change, and economic innovation. They plan to make the metro and buses 100% electric by 2030 and reduce greenhouse gas emission from ports by 80% by 2050. Industrial emissions and air quality monitoring aim to reduce 38% of greenhouse gas emissions and 54% of methane leakage by 2035. Also, the city is aiming for 100% renewable energy supply by 2045 to achieve the effect of climate mitigation, quality jobs, and manpower development, and reduce vehicle miles traveled per capita by at least 13% by 2025. In this way, the Green New Deal is a policy that creates good jobs and provides environmental and social benefits to citizens in the process of rebuilding all infrastructure into a low-carbon and fine dust reduction type. The Green New Deal can be further developed if people take interest and actively participate in promoting proposals, monitoring, and supporting for the successful implementation of each country and city's policies. Have you heard of the International Day of Clean Air for Blue Skies? It is the first UN International Day initiated by South Korea, and the first anniversary was held on September 7, 2020. It was designated to raise awareness of air pollution and strengthen international cooperation. Let's summarize why we need to solve the fine dust problem. The obligation of environmental conservation for future generations, the right to breathe clean air, to maintain a healthy life, to prevent the increase of premature deaths caused by air pollution, to prevent the increase of disease caused by air pollution, to prevent the acceleration of global warming due to air pollution, to prevent discriminatory effects of vulnerable groups due to air pollution, to prevent the economic loss of mortality and disease incidents due to air pollution, to prevent negative impacts to crops and food safety guarantees caused by air pollution. Then what can we do? First, we can reduce fine dust by walking, riding bicycles, using public transportation, and buying more eco-friendly vehicles. Second, when waste is incinerated, it creates more pollution, so reducing waste can help reduce air pollution. Third, save energy. Soot from thermal power plants to create energy is one of the biggest causes of fine dust. Previously, a Seoul National University study confirmed that energy consumption and fine dust generation are proportional. Fourth, conservation of nature that absorbs and decomposes pollutants in the air. We should actively raise our voice in opposing the destruction of nature only for development. Fifth, propose a policy related to fine dust, and monitor and speak out if the policy is being implemented well, if the company is complying with its regulations, and where fine dust is generated. Seventh, support excellent policies related to fine dust. Show interest through social media so that the government can be held accountable. Lastly, spread the ways to build awareness about fine dust and put solutions into practice through social media. The point is that neither a country nor an individual can only do one thing, but it should continue. Strict law enforcement comes first. We need new legislation and policy revisions and the courage to sacrifice to some extent for the environment. Let's protect our air so that the airpocalypse doesn't come. Thank you.